I was sitting on a cracked plastic bench just outside the gas station, clutching a worn-out tote bag and my cardigan even though the sun was blazing. The air smelled like gasoline and pine. Cars zipped by on the highway behind me, their engines loud and uncaring. Inside the cashier, girl couldn't stop glancing at me like she wasn't sure if I was confused or dangerous. She finally stepped out and asked gently, "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "My son just left me here. He drove off, said I should think about what matters to family." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I didn't blame her. I didn't even know how to react myself. You know that moment when your brain hasn't caught up with your body yet, when the hurt sits in your chest like a stone, but the betrayal hasn't fully sunk in. That was me sitting there 67 years old, just dropped off like a grocery bag that someone forgot they didn't need anymore. What had I done? I asked myself that a dozen times in the hour I sat there. Was I overbearing, too protective, too opinionated, or was it simply that I had become inconvenient? I watched the SUV disappear down the winding Colorado road, swallowed by trees and indifference. He didn't even look back. Brandon, my only child, my miracle baby born after 3 miscarriages and a failed adoption. The one I raised alone after his father died in a factory accident when Brandon was 10. The boy who used to say, "Mom, you're the only person I can count on." And now, he had counted me out. I don't know what you believe about motherhood, but I used to think I was a good mother. Not perfect, but devoted, present, honest. But that day, sitting in the middle of nowhere with nothing but a bottle of water and my name stitched into the collar of my coat, I realized something. Maybe love isn't always enough to make people stay. 2, Brandon wasn't just my son, he was the reason I kept going after everything fell apart. After James, my husband, died in that machinery accident, it was just the two of us. I was 37, suddenly a widow with a 10-year-old boy who didn't understand why his dad wasn't coming home. I remember the first night it rained hard, the power went out, and I found Brandon sitting on the kitchen floor in his Spider-Man pajamas crying into a box of cereal. I held him all night whispering, "I've got you, we're gonna be okay." And we were, somehow. I worked double shifts at the diner, missed birthdays, skipped my own doctor appointments, but I always made sure his shoes fit, that he had a packed lunch, and that someone was clapping at every school recital. Brandon was my whole world, and I never once let him feel the weight of what we didn't have. When he met Ashley in college, I was happy for him. She was sweet, polite, and always smiled until the ring went on her finger. Then came the cool silences, the awkward pauses when I walked into the room. But I tried. God knows I tried. I brought her soup when she was pregnant, rubbed her feet when they swelled, even stayed up all night during Chloe's early labor, just holding her hand while Brandon was stuck in traffic. I helped them buy their first house, gave them $12,000 from my retirement savings for the down payment. No questions asked, just a hug and a whispered, "I'm proud of you." Then Logan came. Their second baby, premature, hospital bills through the roof. I didn't hesitate. Sold my Chevy, the car James and I took on our honeymoon, just to cover part of the NICU costs. Brandon hugged me outside the hospital and said, "You're the most solid thing in my life, Mom. I'll never forget what you've done." And I believed him, because I wanted to, because it's easier to believe in loyalty than to admit someone you love is changing, or maybe already has. He used to promise I'd never leave you like Dad did. I should have known promises made in pain don't always survive peace, but I still held on, because that's what mothers do. We hold on, even when the rope starts to burn. 3. The first real crack showed up not long after I loaned them the money. It was $80,000. Not pocket change, but Brandon came to me looking panicked. Said Ashley had lost her job, that the mortgage payments were piling up, and that they might lose the house. He was ashamed, I could tell. His voice was tight, his shoulders hunched like the boy who used to break a window and try to fix it with tape before I found out. I remember sitting across from him at my kitchen table, sunlight catching the gray in his hair. "We'll pay you back, Mom," he said. "1 year tops, I promise. We even wrote it up an official loan agreement." I didn't ask for interest, I just needed to feel like it mattered, like our relationship had lines of trust we both respected. For a few weeks after that, things felt okay. They called more, sent me photos of the kids Chloe at her ballet recital, Logan dressed up like a dinosaur. Ashley even texted me a thank you with heart emojis. I thought maybe this had brought us closer again. But then silence. My calls started going to voicemail. My texts sat on red. Birthdays passed with nothing but a group message and a smiley face. When I sent Chloe a new sweater I'd knitted for her birthday, soft lavender with little daisies, it came back in the mail. Return to sender, same address, no explanation. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe it was a mistake, a mix-up at the post office, but something inside me knew better. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't come from being busy, it comes from being avoided. So I decided to visit, just a casual drop-in, no warning, no expectations. When I pulled up, I almost didn't recognize the place. The lawn was immaculate, new paint on the siding. A sleek black BMW sat in the driveway next to the old SUV I'd helped them buy years ago. Wind chimes on the porch sang softly in the breeze. The whole house looked glossy, like it had something to prove. Ashley answered the door in a silk blouse I knew wasn't from any bargain store. She smiled thinly. "Oh, Eleanor, what a surprise. Brandon's not home and the kids, well, they're out with friends. I asked if I could come in for just a moment." Reluctantly, she stepped aside. Inside, everything smelled like cinnamon and money. New decor, upscale furniture, light fixtures I'd only seen in catalogs. And then I saw the photo framed, centered on the mantel. A perfect family of four beach photo. Matching white shirts. Everyone laughing. I wasn't in it. Not even on a side table. No holiday cards with my handwriting. No fridge magnets holding up Chloe's old drawings I'd helped her color. It was like I'd been carefully edited out of their lives. Brandon came home while I was still there. He hugged me lightly, politely, like you would an old neighbor you hadn't seen in years. When I asked about the loan gently, without pressure, he said, "We're working on it, Mom. It's just been tight lately." Tight, right. I didn't argue, I just nodded, smiled, and let them walk me back to my car. Driving home, I stared at the sweater still sitting in my passenger seat, still folded, still smelling like lavender. That night, I placed it in my drawer with the rest of the forgotten things, and I sat there a long while in the dark, wondering when exactly I became disposable. 4 weeks passed. I kept replaying that visit in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. Every frame, every word, every little pause in Ashley's voice had all gnawed at me. But I still held on to hope that maybe it was stress. Maybe Brandon was just overwhelmed. Maybe I was reading too much into things again, like they always accuse me of. Then one Saturday morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I showed up unannounced. I'd baked a small loaf of banana bread, just like I used to when Brandon was a kid. Warm, wrapped in a dish towel. Something about doing it made me feel grounded, like I still had a place in their lives. I rang the doorbell. No one answered at first, but I could hear movement inside, quick footsteps, a voice maybe Ashley's. Finally, she opened the door, eyes wide. "Eleanor." "Wow. Is everything okay?" "I was just in the neighborhood," I lied, holding up the bread. "Thought I'd stop by." She hesitated, glanced over her shoulder. Now's not really Brandon's tied up in a Zoom call. The kids are out. I smiled gently. "I won't stay long." She reluctantly opened the door wider. The house looked even more lavish than before. A new chandelier sparkled above the entryway. The carpet looked professionally cleaned. There was even a subtle scent of some expensive candle vanilla and sandalwood, maybe. I'd spent my whole life budgeting grocery lists, and here they were living like nothing was ever tight. I spotted Chloe's shoes near the front door, pink sparkly ones I'd mailed her for Christmas 2 years ago. Still looked brand new, untouched. Ashley placed the banana bread on the counter without comment. "Do you want some tea?" she asked, more out of politeness than warmth. "No, thank you. I won't stay long." I looked around. Family portraits lined the hallway, photos of vacations, birthdays, smiling faces. One caught my eye, a beautiful beach photo, the same one I'd seen last time, but now it was enlarged and professionally framed. hung in the center of their living room like a magazine ad. Still no sign of me, not even a small frame tucked in a corner. No pictures of me holding the babies, or blowing candles with them, or braiding Chloe's hair on the porch swing. It was like I'd been erased, deliberately, lovingly. When Brandon finally came out of his office, he looked surprised, forced a smile. Mom, wow, didn't know you were coming. I know. Just dropped by. He hugged me again, brief and personal. I asked about the kids. Oh, Logan's at a sleepover. Chloe's out with her art class. He didn't look me in the eye. We sat for a moment in awkward silence. I could feel Ashley standing in the kitchen eavesdropping. I suddenly felt like an outsider in a house I used to dream of being part of. I was wondering, I began choosing my words carefully if maybe I could spend a weekend with the kids sometime, maybe take them to the lake like we used to. Brandon shifted. They're just so busy lately, Mom. School friends, you know how it is. He gave a sympathetic shrug, but it felt rehearsed. Like a line he'd practiced. I see, I said, softly. He glanced at his watch. I actually have to head to the office soon. Big meeting. And just like that, I was being gently escorted to the door. As I walked out, I glanced back one last time. A new throw pillow on their couch read, "Family is everything." That night, I lay awake thinking, if family is everything, what am I, 5? A week later, Brandon called, not to apologize, not to invite me for dinner. No, he had a proposal. Hey, Mom, he said, sounding unusually cheerful. Ashley and I were thinking, it's been a long time since we all spent time together. How about a weekend trip, just you, me, the kids? We found this great cabin spot up in the Rockies. I paused. I almost didn't believe it. Maybe this was it. Maybe they felt guilty. Maybe this was their olive branch. That sounds nice, I said, slowly, just us. Yeah, he said quickly, just us. Something in his voice itched at me, but I wanted to believe it. I needed to. We left that Friday morning. Brandon picked me up in his SUV. Chloe and Logan were in the back, half asleep with headphones on. Ashley didn't come. She's catching up on work, Brandon said. The drive was long, winding through tall pines and rocky ridges. I tried to make small talk, asking the kids about school, about their friends. They answered in short, distracted sentences. The cabin was nestled high in the mountains, surrounded by snow-dusted evergreens and crisp, cold air. It was beautiful, isolated, yes, but peaceful. We spent Saturday hiking a little, watching movies, toasting marshmallows in the fireplace. For a brief moment, it almost felt real again. But Sunday morning, everything changed. We were packing up. I stepped outside for some air, walked down to the edge of the nearby overlook. The view stretched for miles. I stood there for a long time, letting the wind sting my cheeks. When I walked back up, Brandon was standing by the SUV, hands in his pockets. We should talk, he said, not looking at me. Something about his tone made my stomach knot. He opened the back of the SUV, pulling out a small envelope. About the loan. I froze. I've thought about it, he said, and I don't think it's healthy for anyone to keep money tied up between us. It creates resentment. Brandon, I said carefully, we made an agreement, a signed one. I know, he sighed. But honestly, Mom, it's not about the money anymore. Then what is it about? I asked, my voice cracking. He stared at me, eyes cold. It's about you choosing money over family. You made this loan into a weapon, into leverage, and that's not love. My jaw dropped. I asked for your help, he continued, and you gave it, but with strings. That's not what family does. I didn't ask for interest. I didn't ask for anything except your word. And now you're holding us hostage with it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Brandon, I was there for you every step of your life. I buried your father alone. I worked double shifts so you could have a childhood. And now you're saying I'm what, manipulative? He looked away. I think he said you should sit with this. Think about what matters to family. Then he nodded toward the building behind us, the gas station we'd just stopped at before heading back. I'll be back in a bit. You take your time. I turned toward the restroom door. I needed a minute, just 1 minute to breathe. When I came out, the SUV was gone. I stood there frozen, the cold cutting through my jacket like knives. I scanned the lot. No Brandon, no kids, no car. At first I thought, no, this must be a mistake. Maybe he drove around the back. Maybe he needed to grab something. But minutes passed, then 20, then 40, and it hit me. He'd left me. No wallet, no phone, just a tote bag with a granola bar, a sweater, and the envelope he'd handed me. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a note. This isn't abandonment. It's space. For everyone's good. Please understand. And $60 in cash. I sat down on a cold bench near the edge of the station, the wind roaring louder than my thoughts. That was the moment something cracked open inside me, not just my heart, my hope, my belief that family, no matter how strained, would never leave you by the side of a mountain road. They had. 6. I don't remember how long I sat there. At some point, the sun dipped lower, throwing long shadows across the asphalt. My fingers were numb, and my pride even colder. But I refused to cry. Not there, not in front of strangers, coming in and out to pay for gas and snacks, unaware of the woman unraveling on the bench beside them. Then came Ethan. He couldn't have been more than 22, blonde hair under a backwards cap hoodie with grease stains and a look of genuine concern that I hadn't seen in years. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked, glancing at the empty space beside me like he expected someone to reappear. "My son left," I said quietly. "He's not coming back." Ethan blinked, then sat beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Well, that's just messed up." I let out a weak laugh. "You don't even know the half of it." He didn't press, just offered me a cup of hot cocoa from inside the station and let me use his phone. That one gesture, warmth without condition, was enough to bring the sting behind my eyes back full force. I called a cab. Hours later, I was back in town, back in my small house with faded wallpaper and a teapot still on the stove from Friday morning. And I knew what I had to do. I didn't cry that night. Instead, I opened my file cabinet, the one with all the just-in-case papers, and pulled out the original loan agreement. Brandon's signature was still bold and clear-dated and notarized. Then I opened the second drawer, the one labeled Family Trust. Years ago, when my husband died, I had worked with a lawyer to ensure everything we left behind our house, our savings, our small rental property, would pass to Brandon, but only under conditions of good standing. That clause was the key now. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Eleanor," he said, "are you sure you want to move forward?" I didn't hesitate. I want it all enforced. Every word. Within the week, a formal demand letter was drafted. Brandon had 30 days to repay the loan or forfeit the rights to the family trust assets. That included the rental house currently in his name, but under my legal control, and a clause that allowed repossession if fraud or mistreatment was proven. And it didn't stop there. As I looked deeper into the credit card statements my bank had flagged for unusual activity, I found something chilling. 2 months ago, charges began appearing: luxury dinners, electronics, even a weekend hotel stay, all billed to a card I hadn't used in over a year, a card that I thought I had canceled. Only Brandon had access to it, and I had proof. He'd used my information without permission. I gave everything to my attorney. Then, just as I thought things couldn't sink lower, I received a letter from Child Protective Services. A report had been filed stating that I had abandoned my grandchildren during a family trip, that I had become mentally unstable and wandered off, endangering the kids emotionally. My heart stopped. That was their game. They'd leave me on the side of the road and then try to paint me as the danger. I felt the floor drop beneath me. I thought I'd already seen the worst of betrayal, but this was something darker. Strategic, cruel. Luckily, I wasn't defenseless. What Brandon didn't know was that I had recorded part of our conversation that day on the highway, mostly to remind myself later of what was said. It wasn't a video, but the audio was enough. Him telling me I chose money over family, him telling me to take some space, and most importantly, the sound of the car door shutting, and the SUV driving away while I stood on the side of the road. I gave the audio file to my lawyer and, with his advice, submitted it to CPS. The investigation was dropped within days. No further inquiries, no interviews, no warnings. But now, I was done playing nice. I hired a forensic accountant to go through every document Brandon had signed. It turned out the house he claimed was barely surviving had recently been refinanced without my knowledge using the loan I gave as leverage. That violated the terms of our agreement. My lawyer filed the necessary motions. Brandon would be forced to relinquish control of the property, and I was pursuing a formal fraud complaint. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because somewhere along the road they'd forgotten that love didn't mean silence. It didn't mean enduring betrayal with grace. Sometimes love meant standing up for yourself, especially when no one else would. By the end of the month, Brandon was served, and I was just getting started. 7 Brandon showed up at my door the day after the foreclosure notice landed in his mailbox. No call, no warning, just the sharp screech of tires in the driveway and the pounding of fists on my front door like I owed him an explanation. When I opened it, I was met with a face I barely recognized. His jaw was clenched red with anger, but behind it, fear. The kind of fear only someone who just lost control truly feels. "Mom, what the hell is this?" he barked, holding the papers up like an accusation. I didn't flinch. "It's a consequence." He blinked. "You're actually going through with it. You're taking our house." I kept my tone calm. "No, Brandon. I'm reclaiming what you forfeited the moment you left me on the side of that road." He scoffed. "This is insane. You don't do this to your own family." I took a breath, steady and deliberate. "Neither do you." Before he could respond, Ashley pulled up. Chloe sat in the back seat, peeking out from behind the window. Ashley rushed up the walkway, her expression somewhere between rehearsed concern and manufactured heartbreak. "Eleanor, please," she said, pulling Chloe gently beside her, like a shield. "Let's talk about this. The kids don't understand why Grandma's punishing everyone." I looked down at Chloe, her small fingers clutching her teddy bear. She didn't speak, just stared at me with that same uncertainty I saw in the mirror after Brandon drove away. "Punishment," I said, turning my eyes to Ashley. "No, this is a boundary, one I should have drawn long ago." Ashley's voice cracked. "They'll be homeless. Brandon's been trying so hard. He made a mistake." A mistake, I snapped my voice, rising now finally after all this time. "He left me in the middle of nowhere, without money, without a phone, without a second thought. Then he used my credit cards while filing false reports with CPS to cover his tracks. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Brandon stepped forward, raising his voice. "You always blow things out of proportion." "I was just trying to get through to you." "No," I said firm, now my heart no longer shaken. "You were trying to get away with it." There was a long silence, the kind that hums in your ears when a truth finally lands. "I gave you everything," I continued. "When your father died, I worked 2 jobs to keep you in school. I sold my car to pay for Chloe's hospital bills. I drained my savings to save your home. And you tossed me out like yesterday's mail." Brandon looked down. Ashley's eyes welled up. Chloe still didn't speak. "You raised your voices," I said softer now. "So I raised my value. That broke them. Or at least cracked the performance. They left not long after. No dramatic pleas. No sudden changes of heart. Just silence and the slamming of a car door. The house was quiet, still, but not empty. A few weeks later, the sale finalized. I got every penny back with interest. My lawyer made sure of it. CPS cleared me of every false claim. And the best part, I got my peace back. I moved to a small town tucked into the Colorado foothills. Bought a cozy home with wide windows and a wraparound porch. It's not big, but it's mine. Mine alone. And I got a dog. A golden retriever named Cooper. Loyal, warm, and always there when I need a companion. He doesn't ask for loans. He doesn't lie. He just rests his head on my lap when I cry and follows me wherever I go. Some days the neighborhood kids ride by on their bikes and wave. I wave back. Sometimes they ask me about my son. I just smile and say we're not in touch, but I hope he's well. But in the quiet of the evenings, when Cooper and I sit on the porch and the sun melts behind the hills, I let myself remember. Not to wallow, just to remind myself how far I've come. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering with wisdom, not pain. And when someone asks if I regret cutting them off, I say this. If your own child left you on the highway, would you still be waiting by the road? Or would you finally start walking the other way? Because I did, and I've never looked back.